You're a spiritual being in physical form, a dichotomy of light and dark, where energy equals mass on a journey designed to fulfill our personal legend and purpose, to use humanity throughout, to amplify and transcend, tame the ego, raise the humanity. That's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the High Vibe Zone.
Hello.
And we're back a week later.
I know. Look at this. I think this is going to be a regular. This might be a regular thing. I mean, we have so much to talk about, and the High Vibe Zone is a great place to bring it all together.
It really is. Thank you for creating the space.
You're very welcome, and thank you for being part of it. It's a group effort. Welcome everybody. It is the first Wednesday of March, January, February, March. Like, boop. And we're so excited to talk to y'all about this topic. And I'm Sheree Spons, and I'm here with.
I'm Maria Vargas.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about how to find the job you love. I think this conversation is really going to start off pretty general and broad, and then get more specific as we dial in, because I think this is a really good conversation to look at from different angles versus just like the job lens, but we definitely want to get folks there. If this is your first time joining us in the High Vibe Zone, welcome. We're super excited to have you. Drop your emoji and what you're grateful for in the comments, in the chat. We love seeing those things. And if this is not your first time and you're coming back for more, welcome back. Let us know what you're grateful for. Drop us an emoji. We love emojis as well. I still have not found the encouraging cards of the day. However, I was thinking about that. I was like, I don't have my cards, but I think a good kind of entry to our conversation is something that my mentor told me many, many years ago when I asked her, and I feel like this ties into the conversation a bit too, is like, how do I find my purpose? And she said, your purpose will live between these two questions or answers to the questions of these two questions. What breaks your heart and what makes your heart sing? And so she's like, if you can define those answers, you will be able to kind of be guided deeper to your purpose. And I think that correlates really well when people think about like, what do I love doing? And in relationship to a job or a career, which is really important to sustaining life and survival and different things like that. So it ties into a lot of our day-to-day. So we're going to dive into that. Maria, what do you think, reflecting though on what my mentor shared in terms of advice?
I think that finding your passion, or whatever people are calling it, or your purpose, is sort of like the intersection of something you're really good at or that you excel at, and then also something that you actually enjoy like deeply, and figuring out where they merge. I think for a lot of times it shows up as a job, or I don't know if job is necessarily the right word, but like whatever you do for a living, whatever brings you joy, whatever brings you resources as well. That is often the very intersection of those two things. And the way I was thinking about this question is, it's like brought up ever since you're like 15, right? It's like you're in school and everyone's sort of expecting you, like, what job do you want? Like, what do you think you like? And for me, I wonder if we should look at this at the perspective of finding the job that you want, instead of find, with the same sort of mindset of like, I don't know if we'll ever, I think some people do find that like one thing that you love, but it is sort of a journey and you have to a lot of times go through things that you don't enjoy in order to figure out what you do enjoy. So for me, I almost view it as just like the process itself and learning about yourself and admitting to yourself that you can change and maybe what I thought I loved 10 years ago is different. But at the core, I still think if you look back and like you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. But it's like there's probably a thread that like your 5-year-old self probably enjoyed what you're doing now in some form of or another.
You bring up many good points, and I love how you said, you know, it is about finding, because it is that journey. And something that I think about often is, in order to know what you do want, you do have to know what you don't want. And that journey does take some time. And like you said, what I liked 10 years ago, I might not like now. Something else I think about when I think of the word job, usually it's like that one thing that you are doing for the rest of your life. And, you know, we talked about this quote in Culture Circle, which is, it's the master, the jack of all trades, right? That quote of jack of all trades is a master of none. However, that's not the full quote. It's the jack of all trades is a master of none, but often more, gosh, I can't remember.
Often better than a master of one.
Thank you. Exactly. So when I think of a job, I personally think that it's not just one thing. Like, you don't have to just do this one thing. And usually, like you said, when you're 15, they're like, what do you want to be? You know, what if I want to do and be multiple things, and have and be paid or compensated and receive resources for all of them? And ultimately, I want to stay closest to the thing that makes my heart sing. And I want to stay closest to that thing. So we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about that. For everyone that's watching in the live or the replay, there will be a link in the comments that will have a resource that will be helpful for you deciding and discovering as you're trying to look at, you know, how to find the job that you love. One other thing I'll add before we go into it a little bit more, I was at the park with my little one, and I was sitting at one of the little bench areas that they had, and this woman was talking to me, and she's like, yeah, I've been in tech for this, you know, this amount of time. I work for a great company, but I'm still trying to figure out what I love. And I just thought about that concept of how many of us are out there doing the motions, but we aren't loving that. And what does that do to our bodies? What does that do to our mental state? How does that really affect how we show up? And a lot of us are still trying to figure out. But I think when you're working a job, you probably don't have enough space to think about that what life looks like without this here, until you maybe you quit, you get let go or whatever, then you do have a little bit more space. But how do you proactively think about and consistently think about, am I doing what I love? Because we don't have forever in this physical form, and just to really think about that. And yeah, so how can we do that? So
I love thinking about that and like what makes me happy. And I wonder if one of the first steps to figuring it out, it's kind of identifying where you are. And I almost see it as maybe it's 3 different phases maybe that you're in. And so one phase can be you're in a job that you particularly don't like, you're kind of tired of it, you feel stuck. But you don't have the space or energy to look for a new job. And what you have is good, and you have security, and you like your coworkers, and you like the perks, and you have, you know, insurance and all the things. But everything's so draining that you decide to stay and not look for another job. So I feel like that's kind of one area where you might be. And then another one can be you're doing a job that maybe you don't like. It's maybe not your passion, doesn't make you happy, but you're doing it out of necessity. And I think that's what a lot of people face. And I can only speak from my experience, and my experience here as an immigrant. I would see my parents like working these different odd jobs just to make ends meet. But they always had like the purpose of using that as a stepping stone to the next thing, which in their case ended up being, starting their own company to where they could do what made them happy. But they knew that the purpose of that job that they didn't like served a different end goal or a different purpose. And then the third one is like, you found your calling, you found that thing that makes you happy, the thing that you can spend hours on and not even care, like not even realize time is passing. And personally, that feels like that when we're doing this. So starting to identify those moments in your life when you feel like you're in flow. And I mean, we talk about it all the time, right? It's like when time passes and you're just like, oh, it's 10 o'clock. What just happened?
Yeah, I love those. I love identify where you are. That's really key. Just reflecting on where am I in this moment? Am I using, is this job a resource? Is it a stepping stone? Is it, am I getting enough knowledge of, I like being around people. It's not that I don't like being around people, or I like this aspect of it and I like this aspect of it. And so I think that is very, very wise to really to start thinking about how you find something you love and just being real about where you currently are. And that's okay too.
Let me ask you this. When you were little, what was the first thing that if anyone asked you who you wanted to be when you grow up, what did you have an answer?
Oh yeah. Not only did I have an answer, but I could act it out for you. I wanted to be a preacher and a teacher. And so I would mimic the preacher that I used to grew up with. And I think he's still around. And then I would also mimic the teacher that I had at that time. So those were, I was able to articulate that. I think my mom would probably share some other answers, but that's what I recall.
Well, I was similar to that. I wanted to be a teacher too. And maybe we're not school teachers, but I think we are doing elements of teaching that we did see in our younger selves. I definitely see that in myself. I'm like gravitating towards things like this, where it kind of is a teacher, like elements of being a teacher without being a teacher. I don't know. Maybe you see the same thing.
Yeah, I think you're onto something. I'm not sure if this is your number two, but maybe there's correlation between what you wanted to be when you're younger and what you love in this moment.
I think so. I had a mentor. Did you ever use the music service Groove Shark?
No.
It was like this, you would like find any song for free and it was legal. It was like it was like in the mid 2000s.
Okay.
Anyway, one of the founders came to be a mentor and he's since passed on. But I remember told me like, look at your childhood and pinpoint those moments of like joy and what you thought you wanted to become, or like what you did in your free time. Like, were you gravitating towards like creative projects? And he was like, I would paint shells and sell them at the gas station. What did you do? And like, I would sell brownies and lemonade and like make bracelets. And like, that was my first little business. So it's like, I had the entrepreneur tendency. So like, can you look back on your life and spot patterns?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I can totally spot the patterns.
I love it. What do you think about in terms of like finding, you talk about the love and joy meh concept. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes. So the love and joy meh works really well. And it kind of flows into a little bit of what you shared earlier, is like just recognizing where you are. If you're currently in a space where you're looking for the job that you love, know that you might have a drain in energy. So the first thing is to really just get enough energy to go into this space to creatively think about, what is it that I love, what is it that I enjoy, and what's meant to me. So how I break these down, and I'll drop the document in the comments, and you can it's going to ask you to make a copy of it. But essentially what will come up is, love is what you would do for free. For me, I would help birth babies for free. Like, no questions asked. I'll be right there. Or if someone needed advice and guidance, I would do that for free. And then enjoy is I will do this for free, but I want to be paid for this. Like, this is where I would like that exchange of currency to happen. And then meh is I will pay someone else to do this. Like, I know it's part of something that, you know, comes with maybe what I'm doing and my love or my meh, but it's not something that I would want to do. And so when you identify those, and it could be, you know, 3 to 5 things in each, and it just allows you to kind of see what that looks like and map it out for yourself. But it really does help give yourself a snapshot of how to identify and how you can start to attract what the next role is for you. So if you're speaking to like a recruiter or you're looking at a job description, you can take your love and joy meh and put them, you know, hand in hand and be like, okay, this job is requiring this. This is actually a lot on my meh list. Don't apply for that job. Go for something that has a lot of your enjoy and love on there as much as possible. And you can start to articulate to other people that are like, oh, you're looking for a job. What are you looking for? Use the contents from your love and enjoy. Don't even tell them what you're not looking for. Don't even address the meh, because it's again, you're speaking out into existence what you want. You already know what you don't want. You don't need to harper on that, but then really just using what you've created to add clarity, possibly even put some goals behind it. There's ways to do that as well. But that's the concept around the love and joy meh. And it's actually a tool that I've given to a lot of leaders, people that are looking for jobs. It's a tool that I use consistently in my life as I'm reevaluating certain things. And it's really helpful because it breaks it down in the simplest form.
I think that's great. That can kind of go under that identify where you are. It's as much as like looking into your past as figuring out what your love and joy meh is. And I think even if you have some, like whatever you're doing for a living right now, even if you like it and if you're happy with it, I think it's important for us to, as you said, reevaluate. And I mean, we go through different phases of life. So maybe our love and joy meh shifts, but at least it gives us that moment to say, like, even in my current job or my current role, what can I do less of that's on my meh list? And then what can I do more of that I enjoy or that I love? And that way, at least you'll always keep shifting and like always be ready kind of for what's next, even if you are happy where you are now. And then I think the second thing that you mentioned that maybe is step 2 is the manifestation, or at least that like trusting that things will fall into place. There's a quote that I love. I don't know who it's by. It's what you seek is seeking you. So
I was literally typing that I was literally about to type that.
It is on my sticky note somewhere.
Okay. Please go on.
But yeah, it's like, it's whatever you kind of cultivate in your own head, whatever you cultivate with people around you, those will all end up sort of guiding you, I think, to whatever path leads to finding what you like to do. And for me, it's been friends who helped me. I mean, I met you through a mutual friend. And it's creating these opportunities for yourself. And it's not luck, I think. It is like actually having intention behind what you're trying to do, and who you're around. So I wonder if that's, the second step. What do you think?
I think it's a great step, and the fact that what you are seeking is seeking you. And it happens to work a lot easier when you remove some of the older stories that you have, or the stories of narratives where it's like, oh, you know, you have to work a job like this, or it has to look like this, or just something that's more of a limiting belief. Once you release some of those things, you start to find that there's a whole nother world. Like, the way that we work at Culture Circle, this is the place I've always wanted to work at. Like, with the people, not even just the people, but the way that we interact and the environment and how things are done. This is how I think business should be. It gives us enough space and grace to be humans, to be lunar, but it also allows us to tap into those individual gifts and strengths and areas that we're trying to build skill sets in. And it gives a lot of that space. I'm like, oh, this is great. And the way that we talk to each other and flow, it's really nice. And I'm like, oh, I wish all environments were like this. And it's healthy and it's, energizing. So just know that it is out there. You just have to remove the noise of like, especially like that, the repetitive, oh, it's Monday. Well, you know what? If that's the way that most things are, Tuesday's not going to look any different. Wednesday's not going to change. And by the time you get to Friday, you might as well just chop the week up to not being your week, because there are so many other places that are seeking humans like you. So trust that you have so much to offer, and trust that what you offer, somebody is seeking in this moment right now. Mm-hmm. And so just have that mindset. Know that your love and joy meh does correlate somewhere into some type of vocation or job or career. And so I love number 2. I think it would, yes, absolutely.
And I think it's not like we have to spend a lot of time like sitting around and like trying to find that out, or like it'll happen, and when it happens you'll just know. There's a Steve Jobs quote. He said, your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work, and the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And that, like, you'll know when you find it, I think is my favorite part of that. And I think it carries a lot of truth in that throughout your life, you're just going to know when it feels right. And when something is enjoyable, but you don't love it. Like personally, I had previous jobs where it's like, what I did was fine. Like I enjoyed it, and like it was sort of along my same path. But then I come into a place like working with you at Culture Circle, and I just know that it makes me happy, and that it's part of what I'm meant to do. In addition to being an entrepreneur, in addition to having other ventures, but it's like, how can you build your own ecosystem to sustain yourself, where you find that stability, but you also find the joy, and you also find the happiness, and that it does exist and it can exist.
Absolutely. And that quote just like gave me chills, because it's true. We are always being guided in the direction where we tend to end up is where we put most of our attention. And so if you're feeling any kind of separation, it's usually because your momentum has been put in the direction in which you're not necessarily wanting to go, but you've already asked for the thing that you want. And so there's this pull that's happening, and that trust factor is really, really key. And like you said, you will know, again, the doula in me comes out, like, you'll know when it's time to push. Like you will know. You don't necessarily need a bunch of people telling you like it's time to push. You will feel it. You will know when you need to push. So I think that that's a great number 2. Anyway, well, we won't even get into it.
Number 3.
Let's move on to number 3. Yes.
Well, I think the third one is a little bit of action combined with a little bit of what you usually say, the willing suspension of disbelief. I think it's important for us to realize that not all of our jobs or ventures or whatever we want to do can come from traditional sources. So I would actually suggest, yes, you can like definitely apply to jobs, resumes, but I think a lot of times where we find the best places for us are through other people that we know, or through sort of these unconventional ways. There's an analogy in a book called The Third Door, and he talks about like, if you're trying to get in somewhere, there's like number 1 is the regular door, and number 2 is like trying to like cut your way through the line, and number 3 is like open a window and like go in. So it's not like cheating about going about these things, but it's like, how can you think about these things a little differently? And it's not like, a lot of times it won't be traditional, but that's okay. And then just taking action, like, you're not going to lose anything by applying to a job. You're not going to lose anything by like having a couple odd jobs just to be able to pursue what you love, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. When you were speaking, I remember this was back in when I was head of people and culture at this company, and I remember getting a video resume, or it was like a YouTube, and he expressed what he loved to do in this video. And we were like, we need to hire this person now, because you did something very similar too. I was like, wait a minute, I don't need to go all the way back, but you did something very similar too. You did, I mean, exact same thing. But it was like, to add to what you just said, the action is putting yourself out there, is allowing yourself to shine, which I know can feel like in the pit of your stomach for some people, because you're putting yourself out there. Something else that I would recommend is get comfortable with rejection, because that is the redirection for you. Mm-hmm. And that all flows in part of your action. The willing suspension of disbelief, without going too deep into it, is like Maria and I go to the movies and we get our concessions and we go into the theater. I don't walk up to the screen and say, that's just light being projected onto this screen. I'm not going to allow my emotions to get affected by this 3D, projection or 2D or whatever projection of light onto the screen. No, I sit down, I willingly suspend my disbelief, go into it, find out, do they end up together at the end? Imagine we're, romantic comedy or zombies, whatever we're watching. And then at the end of the night, I can pick up my disbelief and say, you know what, that's like ridiculous. Or yes, no zombies will ever get me. And so as you're going into this, finding a job that you love, willingly suspend your disbelief about how that's possible and the steps and routes that you take to get there. And if you do have to do odd jobs to get there, just know it is all directing you towards that thing that you're asking the most for. The cliche way of like, don't give up. Yes. However, pay attention to the signs. So, again, it kind of goes, you're not 10 centimeters, don't push. Like, don't go against what season you're currently in. Maybe you're still carrying bitterness or disbelief from a previous job, which is not allowing everything to flow. There was something that I shared with a friend many, many years ago. And I said, if you're not getting what you want from a situation, check your energy. What energy are you running when you're applying for jobs? What energy are you running when you're thinking about working? I do this ritual around bills. I take bills, I light an incense, and I play groovy music. And each bill I have, I say, thank you so much for providing whatever that bill is, heat or phone service or internet. And I would just, yes, the money is going out, but I am grateful that I have that. And so it's changed my interaction around that time versus being like, oh, here we go, got to do this. So when you think of finding a job, and I love the keyword finding, because when you have found it, you will know, and you will also be guided and directed in that season. Should that change, you'd be like, I wanted to be an astronaut, now I want to be a vet, or I want to do something else. Mm-hmm. We are lunar in that regard. So I love number 3 for sure.
It is very much about intention, because even if we're feeling stuck right now, maybe the intention there is like, okay, I acknowledge this. What can I do differently? And then something I will also say is like every no gets you closer to a yes. But we do have those like awkward gaps in our lives where maybe we're like in between jobs, or like something is happening and we feel that like panic set in, like, crap, like I don't have a job, or, I just got laid off. That happened to me in 2020 where there was COVID situations happening and we got laid off. And in retrospect, that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because I wasn't really happy where I was. I was like, okay, but that just like gave me the space to say, okay, I need to look for something different. But I think it's important for us all to embrace those moments of pause, and for you to be able to just step back and like assess the situation. And so for me personally, it was hard. Like, I would sit at the computer and not know what to type into the job description. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I don't like, my background is marketing and PR, but nothing with that job title caught my attention. And so for pretty much a month, I never submitted resumes. I was just kind of like waiting around, like, and then it all unfolded as it should. Here we are. But I think it is important, if we can, of course, to take those moments and like appreciate them. And it's okay to rest. It's okay for a little bit of pause and reflection in order to regroup yourself and figure out what you want to do next.
I 100% agree. In fact, that is exactly what's in this article, what to do when you've been laid off or you want to quit your job. First thing is give yourself some space. That could be 3 days, 72, 72 hours is 3 days. Or it could be a week, because usually people are like, I gotta go get a job now. So we go into our daily awareness, which we do not have time to talk about today, but it's such a, just give yourself a little space and give yourself a little grace and know that nothing is happening in void. Nothing happens in void. It's all a part of. So I love exactly what you've shared. In the heart and spirit of wrapping up, you've dropped a lot of, where is it? You know what I'm looking for. There it is. You've dropped a lot of mic drop fire moments, but what would you leave folks watching and listening to this if they're on that journey of finding the job that they love or doing what they love?
Oh, that's such a hard one. I would leave one thought to consider, and that is, when we think about work, think about it in this way. You don't work for anyone or for a company. You work with people and with companies. And I think that perspective at least has helped me figure out what I want to do work-wise. And kind of detaching ourselves from the ownership of these things reminds us of the power that we have within ourselves to make changes and to kind of like stay hungry and stay foolish. Like, don't get so stuck with what you are doing, even if you think it makes you happy. Like, explore new things, and just like take a little bit of that risk, if you can, and just like be ready for what's next, if that is the next logical moment in your life. But yeah, I mean, you work with people and you work with companies, and I think that perspective speaks a lot in itself. So I think that would be my last little thought.
I love it.
What is your final golden nuggets?
I mean, what comes to my mind is, imagine that you are towards the end of your lifespan. Maybe you're 10, 5, 3 years out from transitioning out of this body, this form. And you were to look at the impact and the influence and the things that you've done in life. How would you identify what you loved? And I would look at it from that perspective and back into it, as well as using some of these insights and tools. Because one thing that I've always admired is sitting with my elders and just listening to what they say. And they really do say, find and do what you love. They don't necessarily say, find what makes you the most money the quickest so you can get out and die. Like, I've never heard that advice. But that's the mentality sometimes that we have. And so I'd really ask people to have a conversation maybe with their future self and just see, like, what is it that has lit you up over the years, and just go there and find, or just put it out there. Say, I would like to find that now in this moment, and thank you. And I love how you said, just because you're doing something now, like, it shifts and changes. And again, that's the lunar component of us. So I would definitely double on that. So that would be my advice. And, to everyone that has spent time with us, whether it's live or in the recording, may you find a job or something that lights you up, that provides an exchange of energy, or currency, and currency doesn't just have to be in money. It can be in other ways as well: opportunity, time, connection, different things like that. May you find that. May it find you. May you meet at the point where it all begins and ends at the same time. And I just want to thank everyone for being here with us in the High Vibe Zone. Maria, you are such a great co-host. I think it's official. You're like my co-host. It's so awesome.
Well, what you said was beautiful, and that just sparked one final thought. Maybe we can take it into another High Vibe Zone. But the analogy of we're planting seeds in a garden we'll never get to see, and I think that's a really important factor of our job searches and life purpose searches is, are we creating things, are we planting seeds that will benefit us but will also benefit other people and in the future. So that's definitely something I consider as well, and we can add to our list about finding what we love.
I absolutely love it. Thank you all for being with us here in the High Vibe Zone. I am Sharice Fonz.
And I'm Maria Vargas.
And we'll see you next week.
Thank
Your
you.
spiritual being in physical form, a dichotomy of light and dark, where energy equals mass on a journey designed to fulfill our personal legend and purpose, to use humanity throughout, to amplify and transcend, tame the ego, raise the humanity. That's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the High Vibe Zone.